Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility Podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes. Welcome to another episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. We are your hosts, Sophia, Pavia, and Caitlin Johnson, both registered dietitian nutritionists, both specializing in women's fertility. I myself being the specialist in progesterone production, helping you get pregnant, stay pregnant, and bring home a healthy baby. Caitlin, the specialist in polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS for short. And we are met here today with Stephanie Koch. Caitlin just called her. Caitlin just pronounced her last name Koch, just so you know. But anyway, we're here. We don't need the last name. It's good. Whatever. We're here with Steph, and we're doing a Win Wednesday. So she is here to share her story, to talk about the road that she has walked, what worked, what didn't, what pitfalls happened along the way, and share her experience and her personal wisdom through that experience with you today. So welcome, Steph. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to talk to you guys.
Where do you live, Steph?
I am in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Okay, so I live
in
the headquarters of the Koch brothers. Like Wichita is there's so many Coke plants everywhere. And so it's partly why I asked, but I also just wanted to say Koch.
Well, I'm good with whatever. We've heard it many, many ways.
This woman is so gracious. She's going to let us call her Koch.
It wouldn't be the first time and probably won't be the last time. It's fine.
Listeners, this is the kind of high-level, educated professionalism that you are here for. And that's us laughing at a mispronunciation of somebody's name. Highbrow humor here on the Food Freedom Fertility Podcast. Okay, let's button it up. Steph, thank you for coming on here. Can you just share, zoom out, bird's eye view, give sort of a summary of what your journey was like and how working with Caitlin or I factored in?
Sure. So I have kind of a unique story in that I actually dealt with 3 years of secondary infertility. So our first child was conceived, actually our first cycle trying, super easy, no drama. Our second child was pretty straightforward as well. And it wasn't until he was 1 and we started trying for a third that we really started to struggle. 3 years down the road, it took multiple different specialists telling us we have no idea what's wrong. Everything looks great. Actually, at one point I was told by a doctor that everything looked perfect and my body was just begging to get pregnant, her exact words, which is not really what you want to hear when you're dealing with infertility.
Well, my brain is begging, I'll tell you that.
Exactly. Finally, I actually, having sort of been on the infertility space on social media, I found both of your accounts. I found the podcast account, and sort of at the same time I had found Dr. Naomi Whittaker, who I know you guys have had on a couple times, and was seeing a NAPRO doctor. And long story short, I ended up getting referred to her for surgery. Was diagnosed with endometriosis, had that treated while I was taking Sophia's class and sort of binging the podcast and taking away as much as I could. You want to feel, and I know you guys have talked about this, women who are going through infertility so badly want to feel like there's something that's in our control. And I think that's one of the hardest parts that I dealt with, was so much of it was not in my control. I felt like I was doing absolutely everything I could, researching, reading, just doing all the things, and still being told by different specialists that, well, everything's fine, so we have really nothing to do for you. So it felt really good to be able to focus on my nutrition, focus on my lifestyle changes and things that were so tangible that I could do to help. And that actually, in the long run, helped so much when I was recovering from surgery.
Did you have exposure to NAPRO doctors or technology prior to kind of like the social media research? Had it been something you had a friend get connected through, or was it kind of like no health professionals helping me and you happened to cross her account or an episode with her and thought I should give this a try?
So I knew what NAPRO technology was. I'm very lucky. I grew up, I'm practicing Catholic, so I knew what it was, but there's so little access to it. So the closest NAPRO to me is about 2.5 hours away. And during this time, it was at the height of COVID. I had 2 young children at home. My husband's a police officer. So during that time, he was working 6,
oh my
sometimes
gosh.
7 days a week.
And that was like the craziest time for police
2020,
officers
yeah.
too. Oh no. Oh, God bless him.
Yeah, it was really tough. So it was not super feasible to get to Charlottesville. It's 2.5 hours from me. And it actually just worked out in the most bizarre way where I had to go to Charlottesville one day for work. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to call. Because at this point I had met dead ends with the most well-known reproductive endocrinologists in my area. They had done so many tests. And because we were not willing to pursue IVF, they sort of just washed their hands with us and told us, well, one actually said to me after a miscarriage, oh, well, you know what? Everything looks fine. You're probably just going to get pregnant on your own anyway. Everything looks totally normal. Little did I know I had stage 4 extensive endometriosis, adenomyosis, and all kinds of other stuff going on that was missed by 3 different specialists. So anyway, I happened to go to Charlottesville. I called this NAPRO doctor and just said, hey, I'd really like to come in today. And she's like, well, yeah, we'll squeeze you in. Absolutely. So she saw me and ended up just taking
that
on virtual.
Yeah. Is amazing.
Yeah. It's a totally different model of care from any other doctor I've ever seen. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Well, I'm so glad you got the care that you needed. And so it just sort of was bing, bang, boom. So you went in and saw her, and what was that appointment like, and what was the result?
So that first appointment with the NAPRO, and again, this is after about 1.5 years of dead ends and being told if I wasn't willing to consider IVF, there was nothing more they could do. We had tried medicated cycles, which is very frustrating because I was ovulating fine. So just sort of throwing letrozole at it and trigger shots and hoping for the best. Wasn't doing anything. Hysteroscopy, they found nothing, no polyps, no fibroids. And eventually I was just told, well, you'll probably just get pregnant on your own. I'm like, well, it's been 1.5 years. I don't know how much more time I'm supposed to give it before something happens. And I just had a miscarriage. And I was told with that at least, I use air quotes here, at least we know your body's doing what it's supposed to do. That's what I was told as a result of our loss.
This is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, thanks for that, guys.
This baby pass away.
Exactly.
That's the plan. That's your plan. That's what's supposed to happen. I'm
right.
sorry.
And
That's
it was, thank you. It was terrible. And she just said, oh, we'll just get back on the letrozole right away. And we'll just keep trying that and see what happens. So when I went to the NAPRO, it was a completely different feel from the jump. She just spent an hour talking to me, getting to know my history. And she said, I'm going to call you later today. I'm going to do a workup. She had squeezed me into a small appointment time that wasn't as much time as she would have liked. So she actually called me after hours to finish my workup and just say, I want to get a comprehensive history. I want to come up with a plan that we'll discuss together on what labs to order. So she right off the bat ordered labs that nobody else had thought to check at all. She wanted a full comprehensive cycle review of progesterone. She checked insulin resistance, which was really interesting because I was extremely
both the buzzwords for me and Caitlin. I want to take a minute out of this episode and talk to you about our partner, Fertility Cloud. We decided to partner with Fertility Cloud this season because we have worked with women all over the nation and we have heard the same issues arise again and again. My doctor can't see me for another 8 weeks. I had to wait 3 months to see a specialist, and even then, they didn't really tell me anything. Or there's no one in my small town that knows anything about my situation or can help me. And that's so common because unless you live in a major metropolitan area or a place that has grand medical universities, and honestly, sometimes even then it's still an issue, it's really hard to find fertility specialists who can give you tailored, customized help for your unique fertility situation. And that, my friend, is exactly what Fertility Cloud does for you. They offer everything you need, but right in your home because it's fully online. Another perk is they often have same day or next day appointments, so no waiting weeks and weeks and weeks in order to be seen by someone. And my favorite thing of all, really the pièce de résistance and the reason we are partnered with Fertility Cloud for this season, is they have a love and a passion for helping families grow. It is why they do what they do. It is why they wake up in the morning. It is why they have this world-class staff who cannot wait to step in and help you along your journey. So if this sounds like what you have been dreaming of, click the link in our show notes and go to fertilitycloud.com for $50 off your first visit.
Yes, and nobody had bothered to check that. My progesterone, I had severe estrogen dominance, both having way too high estradiol and way too low progesterone. So it was just like all of the, and I remember my first follow-up, she said to me, well, I have good news and bad news. And both of them are that we have a bunch of red flags to work with here. And it's so crazy because in any other situation, you wouldn't want your doctor to say, hey, we found a whole bunch of stuff wrong with you, right? You would hope for the opposite. But when you've been trying for so long and every single person you ask for help tells you, nope, everything looks great, it's such a relief to hear, well, actually, we have some problems here that we can work on. I had really high prolactin, which is actually very common for women with endometriosis. That was another thing. I had very low testosterone, which is also really common for women with endometriosis. So these were things that right off the bat, nobody had ever brought up to me. I had a normal HSG. She said, I think you have endometriosis. I want you to go for a surgical workup. And nobody had ever brought this up to me when I was never even talking to my OB and saying, hey, I've got this really heavy bleeding and I'm passing a TMI, but I'm passing a clot literally the size of my hand. And they're like, well, that's just your normal. That's your normal. And she was like, yeah, it's not though. So sent for surgery.
Wow. So when she said, I want to send you for a surgery workup, was the closest surgeon Dr. Whittaker?
No. So it was kind of equidistant, and the NAPRO that is more local to me, she's a family medicine doctor who is also certified in NAPRO technology. So she refers out to either Dr. Whittaker in Pennsylvania or Dr. Simon in North Carolina. So Dr. Simon is closer, but I had actually been following Dr. Whittaker on Instagram kind of at the same time that I had found you guys. There were a bunch of, big social media accounts who sort of cross paths a lot.
To love Dr. Whittaker. You just...
I could spend the whole hour talking about Dr. Whittaker after everything she's done for me, but I ended up deciding because I already knew who she was and I could see her passion for better access to care. And that passion is so evident if you followed her for more than like a day. So I decided to make the about 6.5-hour trek up to Pennsylvania.
It's amazing. We're going to have to let Dr. Whittaker know about this episode when you release it. So that
for real. So
hear this testimonial of just how wonderful it is to work with her. So Dr. Whittaker, if you haven't listened to our episodes with her, is a mother of what, 5 at this
4 or 5, yeah.
She actually, her 5th child, she was induced with her 5th child the day after she did my first surgery.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Talk about a woman
what?
that can do anything.
She's unbelievable.
Oh my gosh.
a board certified NAPRO physician, surgeon, OBGYN. I mean, she's just incredible. And isn't she a wife to a service member?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think he's retired at this point, but he was active duty for a long time.
Yeah, just like, honestly, of all the badassery I've met in the world, she's like really high up there. And I know some pretty cool people. So it just makes me happy. I don't know that I've talked on a podcast with a patient of hers. That's just kind of a fun.
Yeah, fun little coinkydink. We didn't even plan that part of it. But okay, so I have a question for you about, now we're talking about treatment, because you saw Dr. Whittaker, who is a surgeon, and did an exploratory lap, right, to check for endometriosis, and then did excision surgery. So can you talk about that, as well as, I mean, you had all this estrogen dominance, you were low progesterone, high prolactin, like what was the treatment for all these things?
So Dr. Whittaker takes a very whole body approach, and actually she had recommended I look into nutrition, and she very candidly said, you know, I'm not a nutritionist, but you should maybe talk to a dietitian. And at that point, I had just enrolled in Sophia's class, actually. So it was, and it was great. So I was like, oh, actually, as a matter of fact, I'm working on that. So I had my diagnostic in March, and I think class started in May. So I spent a ton of time. I had already been binging you guys, your podcast all the time. So I was really focusing on high protein intake, more colorful produce, trying to work on blood sugar balance a ton, because that was something that I knew I was insulin resistant at this point, and I'm just sort of learning what that meant for me. Trying to work in some anti-inflammatory foods into my diet, hydration, changing my exercise. Sophia, that was something I learned so much from you, and that was huge. I actually was a half marathon runner at the time that I had my second child, and while I was trying to conceive. So I sort of backpedaled. I still run, but not quite training to that capacity. And that was a big, giving myself permission to do that was something that I found very, very helpful from listening to you guys talk about that.
Was that an identity shift for you a little bit? Was that hard to, like, giving yourself permission is one thing, like feeling like I'm a half marathoner, you know, like that's a lot to...
It is, and it's something that I am not sure what the future holds. Part of me is like, because my second half that I ran got canceled because of COVID, so I had to do it virtually, and I kind of like want one good redemption one, but then I'm also like, probably not the best for my body. So it is,
run a virtual marathon?
You run it by yourself in your neighborhood, and it's so lame because, I mean, really, anybody who runs in races, the whole point,
it's like the energy of the whole
community,
you know? Like, I'm running a virtual marathon right now.
It's ridiculous. I mean,
just
I did
ran
run
another.
It's just, 13 miles in my neighborhood is like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
If you're not on the same course with other people and you have more downhill or uphill or curves or whatever, like, it's not comparable. Right. I get it. Like, everybody was under a lot of scrutiny, and there were a lot of like very powerful people doing a lot of very harsh things if organizations allowed people to gather, and so they're just trying to like get something going, and so here you go, doing their best, but that does sound rather lame, so I can understand why you'd want to do something different.
Yeah.
We are so glad you're enjoying this episode, and we want to take a brief moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Fullwell. Fullwell is not only a reproductive nutrition supplement company created and formulated by a registered dietitian, but they are a company that has the highest quality standards. They use the most bioavailable ingredients in the right amounts to ensure that you're getting the most out of your supplement. And let me tell you about one specific supplement, the Fertility Booster. The Fertility Booster is a combination of adaptogenic herbs and powerful antioxidants. Oxidative stress is something that occurs in every single body, and when it's accumulated, it can deplete antioxidants. Upping the antioxidants in the body by turning on the antioxidant protection system through food and supplementation is one way to support the body's free radical defenses and better support fertility overall. Oxidative stress impacts all humans, and this is one thing I love about the fertility booster. It helps supercharge both egg and sperm quality. You've heard about stress and how it can impact so many things in our body and how so many people just say, hey, just relax and you'll get pregnant. Well, ashwagandha is actually an adaptogenic herb, and it can help reduce cortisol levels and increase sexual function. So the next time someone tells you to just relax, you can say, hey, no, I don't need to just relax. I'm taking the fertility booster by Fullwell and supporting myself in this way. When we talk about powerful antioxidants, one of them that is the king of the show is coenzyme Q10. In its reduced form, it functions as an antioxidant in cell membranes and lipoproteins, helping to optimize fertility. And the queen of the show, in my opinion, N-acetylcysteine. It's a supplement form of cysteine, a semi-essential amino acid that benefits fertility via its role as a precursor to glutathione. It can also support healthy cervical mucus. So next time you're ordering your Fullwell Fertility Prenatal, make sure that you grab a hold of their fertility booster so you and your partner can get a healthy dose of these antioxidants and stress support. Use the code FFF20 at checkout to get 20% off your first order. And now back to our show.
But yes, it is hard to sort of shift gears like that. And it's hard for me. I'm a very high drive person. So it's very hard to say, okay, well, you just shouldn't do that. It's hard to
It's funny you
accept,
describe yourself as
sure.
a high drive person. My husband was just talking to me about high drive dogs. And
I train scent detection canines for a living.
That's so funny. Okay, he works with dogs like that. That do scent detection, that do explosive things, that take down, target people, and that's so funny because he calls them high drive. Because okay, we'll just take a small caveat for a moment here. There's he works on a military base, and they have this gym. And then outside the gym, there's an outdoor gym that has all the same sorts of stuff. And then this big turf. And so I'll go with the girls and we'll play on the turf and I'll do a little workout or something. We just kind of play around there. But that turf is also where often they'll train the working dogs. And so Louis, the girls are like, dogs, and Louis like, that dog will rip your freaking face off, it's a very well-trained dog, extremely well-trained, and will do what the owner says, to the point of death. But if you think that this dog is having a happy catch or something, no, when this dog is in work mode, everybody stand back. And I was trying to describe it, and he was like, high drive. That's what that dog is high drive. Mm-hmm. And it's always the Malinois, always the Belgian Malinois dog. The highest drive of all.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for our dog talk. Caitlin has a dog. Tell us about POTUS for a second here.
I was just going to say, frankly, we watched literally the coolest IMAX on superhero dogs. I forget, that might be the name of it. I don't know if you've seen it, Steph, but
I haven't.
My daughter is so into animals, and I think, wow, that would be a really fun career to train working dogs.
It's the best.
Is it the best?
It's the most fun.
Okay. Well, we need to connect on that sometime.
Anytime.
Off tape, but let's redirect. We were talking
Back
about
away
half
from the
marathons
dogs.
and identity.
Listen,
so
if you don't want to hear about dogs, this is the wrong podcast for you.
Talk to me a little bit about what Dr. Whittaker wanted to do to address some of the hormone pieces. There's a lot of options for some of these things,
yes.
hyperprolactinemia. obviously we're going to rule out some things, but you can go on medicine for that. Like, there are options here. I'd love to hear what she was recommending.
Yeah, so I was working with both Dr. Whittaker and my local NAPRO, who is Dr. Pohelis. She was managing those components prior to surgery as well, and we had talked about starting medication for it, but she kind of wanted to wait and see if that shifted after the excision surgery to see if that sort of self-corrected a little bit. Dr. Whittaker, our main goal was to manage the estrogen dominance, and she sort of takes a different approach than a lot of conventional doctors do, where she had me doing HCG injections post peak, so not the same as a trigger shot, which I had done with the reproductive endocrinologist who absolutely for no reason, but she had me doing these HCG injections post peak to sort of
that means after
essentially
ovulation
trick your
for
body
people
into
that are
thinking.
wondering.
Yeah, sorry.
Post-peak is a NAPRO
Yeah,
phrase.
that's the Creighton talk in the NAPRO world. Yeah. Yes.
So it's after ovulation, whereas the trigger shot is before ovulation. So she's having you do these shots after ovulation.
Yes, and the idea was it would basically trick your body into thinking it's pregnant to sort of balance the hormones itself. And in addition to that, I was also taking progesterone as well. So I was taking, I think I was doing suppositories at the time, as well as the HCG injections.
So you're not the first person that's talked about HCG injections post-ovulation in these Win Wednesdays recently, and I made a note to at some point come clarify why that is done, because we didn't really talk even just a sentence or two about the pathophysiology of it. But part of what happens when your body starts making its own HCG, which is the human growth hormone, it's that sex hormone that tells your body, hey, you're pregnant. Okay,
it's not human growth hormone. That's HGH. HCG is human chorionic gonadotropin.
What did I say?
You said human growth hormone. It's human chorionic gonadotropin, and chorionic basically means placenta. So it pretty much is like if you were pregnant, this little placenta that your baby's starting to grow is what will start putting this hormone in your bloodstream. It's fine. I mean, honestly, listener, there will not be a quiz after this. I just want you guys to understand. I mean, it's not super vital for your daily life, but
Freudian slip. So this number increases as you become more pregnant to a certain point. And there's kind of like this positive feedback system where as your body starts seeing this hormone, your body starts increasing progesterone. So Steph described how she not only had a lot of estrogen, a dominance in estrogen, but also that can happen because you make a lot of estrogen, or it can happen too because you're not making enough progesterone, or both. And so taking these injections is different than just saying, here's more progesterone. It's a way to stimulate your body, kind of trick your body, as you will, to make more of it on its own. So that idea of like, I'm tricking my body into thinking it's pregnant so it'll balance the hormones. The way that it's doing is enhancing until the placenta can really start taking over, or the HCG, if you are pregnant, is high enough on its own to take over and tell your corpus luteum to make more progesterone. It's kind of doing that artificially, and it's just another way to support, maybe in like a more foundational approach, increasing progesterone production within your body itself versus just adding exogenous progesterone on top of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it. Great explanation.
And, you know, concurrently with nutritional changes, trying to make sure I was eating my cruciferous vegetables to properly detox estrogen. Thanks, guys. And just trying to prep for surgery. I started seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist post-excision as well. The excision surgery was a lot more extensive than we had initially thought it was going to be. I was actually under for about 10 hours. I had pretty extensive disease, and Dr. Whittaker took an entire day basically to excise it and put everything back where it was supposed to be from all of the adhesions that I had. And then we focused heavily on, trying to keep that hormonal balance. So even post-op, I was still on that regimen where I was taking the post-peak HCG, staying on progesterone and working on those lifestyle changes.
And how long in between the excision surgery did she recommend you wait before you try starting to conceive again?
So I had the excision surgery right in the middle of my cycle. I actually had just ovulated like a day or two prior, which was really cool. I'm going to nerd out on that for a second because I've been charting my cycle since I got married. I've always used fertility awareness or natural family planning to us Catholics. And so I asked her, I said, so according to my chart, I think I had peak a day or two ago. So she's like, all right, well, we'll see when we get in there. And one of the things she said when I came out was like, actually, we found a corpus luteum. You did just ovulate. So that was like a huge success that our charting was accurate. But it's such a weird thing to be so excited about in that moment. But I was really pumped because timing's so important too, right? So anyway, she wanted us to finish out that cycle and wait one full cycle. And then we were going to have my post-op appointment to sort of review my chart and see how things were going. So I had that appointment about 6 weeks later and was sort of given the green light to start trying again after, because my cycle, the change for me was immediate. And I know that that's not typical. I was told to expect to take about 3 cycles before I really saw a change. But right off the jump, that very next cycle, I had great quality and quantity cervical mucus where I hadn't previously. My period was immediately different. Even the cycle like that I was in when I had the surgery, it was still a huge difference. And I was terrified for that period. I was like, man, if I thought they were bad before, I just had this 10-hour surgery, my uterus is mad, right? But it actually was so different for me right away. And since my chart looked so great, I was given the green light to start trying right away.
It's amazing. And so then what happened? What did that look like?
So our first cycle, we did not conceive, and that was the first cycle in a long time that it didn't feel earth-shattering because
you're like, well, come on.
It was going to take a while. And we knew what was going on finally, so it was kind of like, all right.
Knowing versus not knowing is such a big difference mentally.
Huge. It's huge. It changes everything. And we actually... Originally, going into my surgery, she had told us we could expect it could take up to 18 months because I had a very severe case. So we were kind of anticipating it being, she called it a marathon, not a sprint. And
you're like, I know about those. That's good.
I know what that word means.
Would you say it's more of a virtual marathon, doctor?
Nobody wants those. We ended up actually getting pregnant naturally our second cycle trying after my surgery.
Boom! What? Amazing. Gosh, thank God. That's such a beautiful story.
We actually had another little bit of a big surprise because that conception was actually twins.
Oh, I was
Two
just about
babies?
to say, was it twins? Wow.
Yeah, so I have a family history of twins, and we always joked that it was a possibility. And of course, having all of these monitored cycles over the years, I knew that my body regularly released multiple follicles. But of course, when you're going through infertility, I remember seeing that positive test and physically falling to the ground sobbing. And the shock is just so overwhelming. So then the first time you're sitting on the table, and I'm like, I had a lot of anxiety. I actually saw a women's health therapist during my pregnancy because the anxiety after going through infertility and a pregnancy loss was so strong that I couldn't function. I was terrified every day. So I remember making a joke with the midwife as I'm sitting on the little bed getting my first ultrasound. My husband wasn't with me. I know you guys are military wives, so this is not unusual for you, but my husband's a police officer. He doesn't travel for work very often, but the first trip he'd had in like years for work happened to be over my first ultrasound with this pregnancy when I'm already so nervous. So the midwife was like, well, if you want to wait, we could do it at the next one, you know, wait for your husband to be here. And I'm like, well, you know, we're really nervous because we just had a loss and we just went through all of this stuff. I just had the surgery. So we just want to make sure that everything's okay, that it's not ectopic. That's a big concern for a lot of women with endo. And I had extensive tubal disease. So that's on my mind too. And I made a joke with her. I'm like, yeah, twins run in my family, so we always want to make sure it's only one. Ha ha. Joke's on me.
Ha. 2 heartbeats.
Get ready for a Lulu.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow. So, okay.
So usually, if they run in the family, we're talking about fraternal. Twins, right?
Yes, I actually have a boy and a girl.
And
wow.
Did they both have their own sac? Did they?
Yes.
Like, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Amazing. So talk to me about this twin pregnancy. What was that like? Other than the anxiety. I mean.
Yeah. Well, that was a big component too with it being a multiple pregnancy. You would think I was carrying baby aliens if you were ever in an MFM appointment with maternal fetal medicine or the OBs. Eventually, it got to a point where we were so stressed out every single time we went to an OB appointment that when I was 29 weeks pregnant, we actually switched into the care of a home birth midwife team, and we actually had a home birth with our twins.
Stop! You are the coolest. I am so impressed.
Okay, badassery alert. Like
the gals we've been having on these Win Wednesdays are just blowing my mind. This is so cool, Steph. So okay, when you say you would have thought they were aliens,
all,
because like the doctors are treating you like you're like a bomb about to explode or something, and like the babies are diseased. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
they were treating you like, oh, like this is some foreign concept, and you're like on the verge of death at every moment. Okay, got it. We're taking a break from this episode to talk to you about one of our wonderful sponsors called NutriSense. So this isn't just another health trend. This is a program that helps everyone take control of their health and fertility by making lasting changes based on their unique needs. NutriSense is loved by over 100,000 members, and it offers a unique combination of expert nutritionist support from credentialed experts with continuous glucose monitoring data insights. So it's science plus a human touch, and it offers one-on-one support from the expert nutritionist team at NutriSense. So basically what NutriSense does is it gives you the support you need along with the data that you're getting from a continuous glucose monitor. Combining those two together with NutriSense offers you a science-backed way to take control of your health unlike anything else out there. It's access to the continuous glucose monitor as well as guidance from a nutritionist so that you can interpret this data and turn it into lasting results in your body. If you've listened to this podcast for more than 90 seconds, you know that we really don't believe in like a one-size-fits-all nutrition plan, and that things really need to be tailored to an individual for their personal health and fertility goals in order to succeed. And that's really what NutriSense offers. If this sounds like something you're interested in, which, P.S., you should be interested in this, head over to nutrisense.io/FFF and use the code FFF50 to get $50 off your first month with NutriSense.
Yes, and every time I would ask a question of like something that just had no logic to it, I would ask a question and the answer was because twins. Like that's all they could say. And I'm like, okay, but why? And they're like, because it's twin. I had doctors actually say to me, because that's just what you do. I'm like, oh, not really okay with that. So, and I'm so thankful because I really wanted to avoid another pelvic surgery. Keep in mind, I got pregnant 2 months after my excision. And so I had Dr. Whittaker saying that there was no reason for a C-section. One of the OBs that I was seeing actually went so far as to say after reviewing my records, I should not have a C-section if I could avoid it because of how much trauma had been, going on in my body that year.
Is that comforting to you, especially Dr. Whittaker, to say like, you don't need a C-section, your uterus can do this?
Yes. There was no need. There was no cut. Anyway, that's a whole separate issue. But it was like, and then the biggest thing for me that was really frustrating, this is a whole off-topic thing, but over 50% of twins are born with at least one baby breech. So if I had doctors who didn't know how to deliver breech, that was something that was a huge problem for me. So I ended up switching to a midwifery team who is one of the top breech providers in my area, and that was a really good thing because my daughter flipped after her brother was born, so she was born breech.
Wow. What kind, like Frank breech, butt, feet?
Like not even
what
just like 2 home births, but
so
in one day.
This is actually very rare, but she was footling because, you know, she's a twin. So typically that's not something that happens with full-term babies, but she was like, he's gone. I finally have room now. I'm stretching out, and just legs. Legs.
Just flopped her little feet on down. And then you birthed her out.
She did.
And then there she was.
Yep.
Oh my god.
There she was.
Were you just
How long was your labor? We need all of this. This is the greatest story ever.
So that's one of the more interesting parts. My water broke in the middle of the night while I was sleeping, and I just woke up to this feeling of like an explosion going off inside of me. He was in my arms almost exactly 6 hours later, and my daughter, from the time my son was born, was 6.5 hours.
Wow.
So they're quite far apart for twins.
That is pretty far apart for twins. So how far gestation were you?
They were 37 weeks and 6 days, and I want to actually thank you guys also for that, for their health, because one thing that's really important in a twin pregnancy is adequate protein intake. It's really, really, really important, and that is very difficult for most people, and we're talking 150 grams a day.
That's tough. That's
the
a lot.
number is... It's a lot, and especially when you don't feel well or when you have no room in your body.
No room.
And I think if I hadn't spent so much time listening to you guys and taking Sophia's class, I don't know that I would have been able to achieve that. And that is one of the most important components to carrying multiples to term. And I had 2 full-size babies. My son was 7 pounds 2 ounces, and my daughter was 6 pounds 11 ounces. So they were good.
Amazing.
Well,
we want to see belly pics before the babies were born. We want to see pics.
Oh my gosh!
If you had
of the home birth, we want
home birth pics, home birth videos, and then we want to see these babies.
I have Fiona to you while you train a dog.
Yeah.
You're so cool. You're just like a cool lady. Wow.
And
this is an incredible story.
You're very kind.
How was your recovery? Like, you know, you birth these babies, you have to recover from birth. Like, how was this for you in postpartum, and were you able to breastfeed, and how did it go?
Yeah, my twins are 10 months old today. They are still breastfeeding, which again, another win for you guys. No, seriously, another win for you guys, because nutrition is such a huge factor to this. And the way that I live my life now is so different from how I lived with my first 2 children. And I don't think I could produce enough milk. So that prolactin, kind of coming full circle, the high prolactin levels, I had serious oversupply issues with my first 2 children, to the point where it made them sick. They had severe reflux issues. Breastfeeding was very difficult because I was literally choking them. So with the twins, I actually do not have an oversupply issue. And I don't know, I haven't had my prolactin tested since the surgery because I haven't needed to. I got pregnant right away, so we didn't have to keep looking. But I wonder sometimes if that was a part of it. But having the adequate nutrition to produce milk for 2 babies is very difficult. And I really feel like I just learned so much from you guys that's made a huge difference in my ability to do that.
You're so cool. I can't get over
I'm
this episode.
honored to be even a piece of this story, let alone for you to be like thanking me for my work. But like, I'm just
a huge piece.
Well, thank you. You are really the star, because you had to
twins.
Let me come on here and talk about it.
Show.
Let me spare one of my precious hours for you.
Somebody has to, because it shouldn't have taken so many years for me to get answers, and so many women go through that. You know,
or so many women go through any sort of fertility care. and then end up in this crazy maternal fetal medicine, these like wild amounts of extreme medicalization of birth, and then end up traumatized because of it, having to, oh, well, I got induced and it was this thing and everything was bad and everything fell apart and, you know, I had to have surgery and I can't have kids anymore, like whatever. Like we see that happen way too often, this sort of conveyor belt, you know, from fertility care to maternity care to pregnancy care, and it just kind of like pushes you forward. And don't get me wrong, there are absolutely people that need that. That's so true, but way more the exception than the rule. And I find it goes the other way around. Usually it's treated like this is normal for anyone who needs fertility help, and it really isn't.
You know, I think if this had been primary fertility, I for sure would have ended up in that box. But because I have 2 other children, my first birth was extremely traumatic, a hospital birth, non-consensual episiotomy was the end of that birth. It was really a just awful experience. And I think I educated myself so much because of that. So that's one thing I'm actually very thankful for, because I'm certain, just the way that everything went down with the twins, I'm certain I would have had a C-section if I hadn't had that experience first.
Yeah, tell me like how the midwives manage that 6.5 hour gap between.
Oh my gosh.
No, it was just a
They
half-hour
were
gap,
so
not a
much-
6.5 hour gap.
No,
It was
she's right. It was 6.5 hours.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not understand that. I missed that. And when you were like, oh,
Yeah.
one baby was born at 6 hours, the other was born at 6.5, I'm thinking it's a half hour between twins. And you're like, wow, that's a long time.
No,
and I was
6.5 hours later.
actually, it's really not. But okay. I'm glad I
No.
didn't say anything stupid.
No,
Okay.
6.5, yeah.
That is a very long time
It was
between
harder
twins.
on me. It's a very long time. And so one of the things that I had dealt with, and I know you guys have talked about this as well. I swear, I've binged your podcasts for years. Getting pregnant does not take away the anxiety. It doesn't take away the trauma. And in my case, it actually made it a lot worse because I was so afraid of something bad happening. I kept thinking this, especially because it was twins, this is too good to be true. I knew that, you know, I have 2 boys. My oldest 2 are both boys. And I knew that I asked the sonographer, I need to know if it's 2 more boys. I just need to know, because I need to mentally prepare if I'm going to have 4 boys in my house. I have to know. And you guys have daughters, so you don't know this, but when you have multiple boys, you are constantly in danger of your house collapsing in on itself. So I was just like, I need to mentally prepare myself. So I knew that I had at least 1 daughter. So after my son had been born and we found out he was a boy, I knew that the baby that hadn't been born yet had to be a girl.
Did you know that you were having a boy and a girl, or did you know that we
knew it was
at
not
least
2 boys. It was
that's
not
all
2
you
boys.
knew?
Yeah.
That's
my
fun.
first child we didn't find out at all, and that was so wonderful and so exciting. So
you can't convince people how great it is. You
it
just
was
can't.
awesome.
So
Seeing
fun.
my husband's face when he told me it was anyway. There was such a big part of my brain that kept saying, this is too good to be true. You're going to get everything you've been begging God for so long. My oldest child, he is a very sensitive, sweet boy, and he had been praying and begging God for a girl baby since the day his little brother was brought home. He wanted a sister so badly. And when we had our pregnancy loss, having to tell my 4-year-olds that, hey, this baby that you've been praying for has passed away. You know, having to have those conversations is just really difficult. And he's been begging for a sister. And I just kept thinking, something's wrong. It's taking too long. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what's going to happen.
This is the tragedy.
And
it's happening to me now.
My midwives were amazing. This is exactly. And my midwives were absolutely incredible. They just kept saying, your baby is wise. Your baby knows how to get out. She just has to find her path. So we ended up finding when she flipped breech, she had her cord wrapped around her ankle. So if she was head down, she was stuck. So they were like, she knew what she had to do. She just had to, she was probably enjoying her space for a while, to be honest. But they were just so encouraging, and we just kept trying.
She knew there was 3 brothers waiting for her on the outside, so she was like, this is the last piece I'm going to have for the rest of my life.
That's true. Although she is, as much as my oldest prayed for a little girl, that has held true. She's 10 months old and she is still the light of his life. So she is very spoiled by her oldest brother. But yeah, she just wanted to make things really exciting for us. But the midwives were wonderful, moral of the story.
I love that. And they didn't treat it like an
wonderful. You
emergency and a
responded to it.
disease. Yeah, and they just, I
Certainly
love
No,
it.
and I was
monitoring things.
Yes,
by about
but the
3
fact
hours
that
in,
she was,
I was like, I'm done.
I bet.
C-section, like, let's go, guys. I'm done with this. Get her out. And they were like, no, you're fine.
Amazing. So can you just tell us that moment where you gave that final push and you caught your little girl and you saw her face? Tell us about that.
So she'd actually given us a little bit of drama when she was born, which is pretty common with breech babies. They sort of take a little longer to cry. They're a little bit floppy. Luckily, my midwives were extremely wise and had prepared me for that. But still, she needed a little bit of extra help. So they were trying to get her breathing. So that was another like trauma and terror of like, I knew it was too good to be true. I knew I couldn't possibly have everything. Nobody gets to have everything. So hearing her cry for the first time and like being able to pick her up was the most indescribable joy and relief. And just like a shock that you can't believe. Every minute of the last 3 years is so worth it. Every minute I had 3 surgeries to treat the endometriosis, all of the medications, every injection, every blood draw that weeks of needle pricking. It's
Hours
so worth
in the
it.
car.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Days.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Drove to the closest hospital.
Exactly. It's so worth it. And,
Wow,
it's
what an incredible story.
it's something you just can't prepare for it.
Steph, I
Thank you for
almost feel like
telling us
there's a
that.
piece of your faith journey in this where it's like
Huge.
and then God at the end of it was like, and do you see I'm good now? Like,
So-
and do you see my loving kindness and my mercy? And
So-
do you see, like, have I shown you I'm good?
Anyone who isn't Christian won't resonate with this, but one thing that I used to pray for often was just give me a sign to tell me, do I keep going or do I give up? Because it is so mentally exhausting to go through this. And there were times where I felt secondary infertility has another component of it too, because you are a mom. So there were parts of me that I would feel so guilty thinking I'm missing out on the joy of my children because I'm focused on trying to get pregnant. I'm focused on this journey. And so I used to pray, please just give me a sign. Am I supposed to keep going? Do I give up? What do I do? And actually, after I left my appointment with Dr. Whittaker, we had a rainstorm. And as I'm driving home from Pennsylvania, there was a huge rainbow. I took a picture of it. I saved it. There was a huge rainbow over the highway. And I just started sobbing because I just felt like, okay, there it is. That's my rainbow. I'm trying to conceive my rainbow baby. That's a sign of God's promise to us. And then I had my excision surgery. My parents were staying at my house to take care of my other 2 children while my husband was with me in Pennsylvania. And my mom sent us a picture of a huge rainbow over our house that day, like as I was coming out of surgery. And again, I saved it. I have the picture.
God
And
was like, here's 2 rainbow babies.
It was, yeah.
2
So it
rainbows
was
and 2 rainbow babies.
So excited to tell you that the PCOS app is sponsoring this podcast episode. The PCOS app is a one-stop shop for all things PCOS. It's also your meal guide and inspo all in one. If you love listening to me on this podcast and you feel like, hey, I want Caitlin to be in my ear every day encouraging me about how to manage my PCOS, then you have to go download the PCOS app. We have curated articles to answer questions that you have about PCOS. There are short snippets in the PCOS Answers podcast exclusive to the PCOS app. We also have recipes where I not only give you the recipe, but teach you within the recipe itself what I have done to make it more blood sugar and hormone supporting so that you can take your own recipes and make them more PCOS friendly. If you've been looking for the Google of all things PCOS,
with the filter of compassion and expertise that you get from Caitlin Johnson, RD, then you have found it in the PCOS app. Head to your Android or Apple store today, download it, and let's hang out.
Yeah. And after, I knew that it would happen. And that is a huge piece of our faith. So that was something that is really special and I hold very close to my heart.
Wow. I love it. And for those of you that don't understand the rainbow significance, it comes from really early on in the Bible when there was a flood that was really tragic to mankind and really tragic to God. And basically God saying, look, I'm not going to go through this again. We're not going to have a flood like this again. Nothing like this is going to happen ever again. And he made the rainbow. And it's sort of like God promising the tragedy that you just went through isn't happening again.
I couldn't have spent my afternoon doing anything better than listening to you tell this redemptive story. And
what a shot of life into our arms as practitioners too. Like, gosh, renewed passion.
You make a difference. That's for sure.
And let's sing the praises of NAPRO and Dr. Whittaker and Dr. What was the other one that you... Pohalis, who got you in same day. I mean, an angel on earth for being a medical practitioner, being able to pull that off, squeeze you in. And also, like, you're training cool dogs that are probably saving.
We're going to need pictures of the dogs, too.
Because of... Yeah, you need to send us, like, whatever you're willing going out into the social media world.
We're going to have, like, a Steph week where it's just like, here's so much. Here's all the things we wanted to see from her.
Yeah. My dogs are much cooler than I am, I promise.
I don't know if I believe that.
This story is really, this story is right up our alley. This is just amazing.
Yeah, we needed to pop the popcorn. I'm going to start popping popcorn before Wednesday episodes. But Steph, you have earned yourself a yeah girl. You have made it through an episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. Tell us something you want to celebrate, and Caitlin and Sophia will yeah girl all afternoon about it.
Well, the twins are 10 months old today, so surviving 10 months with infant twins and 2 older children is definitely in and of itself, I think.
A miracle. Yeah, girl.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, girl. Yeah, girl, and your babies.
You're doing really hard things. Yeah, girl.
You are.
Amazing.
Yeah, girl. We're impressed.
So, what do you want to yeah, girl?
Yeah, girl. I don't know. I'm having problems. Don't do me right now. I can't think of one.
Sophia cannot compute.
I can't compute.
I will yeah, girl.
You yeah, girl first.
I'll yeah, girl first. Okay, we started a summer Bible study at our church on Wednesday nights, and I've been searching for a church community for a long time that I felt really at home after just having some hard things happen in church communities. And this summer Bible study is optional. It's got a theme. This summer we're looking at the character of God. And our church is just filled with little kids, just so overflowing with families with children, small children the size of us. When they release the kids to children ministry after worship, it's half the church goes downstairs to where the children ministry rooms are. And I was really, really impressed. I don't focus well with my children in church when they're around, so I found childcare for them that night. But I was really just blown away by how many people showed up to this hour that is more in-depth study. Get your Bible out, take notes, not just and how many parents just brought their little kids and made them sit and do things like color, do this or that. But I was really impressed by this very rich church community's devotion to learning scripture, and I was just really encouraged. It was this huge answer to prayer, And just like sitting in there and appreciating the community we have found and that God led us to, just felt really good. And I'll still get my children childcare all summer long when we go, but I appreciate just like the commitment people have to getting to know God, and I love that. So that's what I'm really thankful for.
Yeah, girl. That's
Yeah,
a great
that's awesome.
girl. Mine is going to be completely opposite of that, and I'm going to say that I survived watching a horror movie last night that I hated, and my husband really wanted me to watch it. It is a movie that I saw for the first time when I was 7 years old, and it made me so scared that I threw up, and it was called Alien
Oh my
with
God.
Sigourney Weaver. Yes. Why are my parents showing a 7-year-old this movie? The truth is, they wanted to watch it, and I was
My
like,
mom
no,
loved that
I can
movie,
watch
too.
it whenever. Yeah, it's good. Let me watch it, and I'm the youngest, and so, like, everybody else is like, ugh, we don't want to watch Homeward Bound again with you, and so, everybody's older than me. They all want to
I
watch
just
Alien.
watched that with my kids.
You watched Homeward Bound? Well, anyway.
I did. It's much worse as an adult.
Is it? Oh, yeah. But
Yeah.
the point
Oh,
being,
man.
I watched Alien, and I sat there, and my husband was kind of a dick about it. Like, he made me, like, if I pulled the blanket up over my eye, he pulled it back down. If I tried to look away or look at my phone, he paused it and waited for me to look back at the screen. And I was
my
like,
God.
why do you care that I watch this?
Repay
He's like,
that to
I wanna
him
watch this
sometime.
with you. He knows. His whole family
Did he see it before?
mocks him for this. He loves this. He's like, it's a classic sci-fi. It totally changed the sci-fi genre forever. Like, so much of what this movie has like changed cinematic zeitgeist. Like, this is a very important film. He's been doing this like slowly over time. He made me watch Predator recently. He made me watch American Psycho. Like, and truth be told, Predator and American Psycho are both actually very good movies. And I thought they were going to be like horribly scary and everything, and they're just actually not. Like, they're more of like a thriller, not like scary. But I feel like Alien was like actually scary, and so much of how it was filmed, it was just like a freaking strobe light in your face. It's like, imagine what you're in this dark room with just a strobe light. Like, I think that's probably why I threw up when I was little, is too much strobe. But I got through it last night. I watched it.
Too much strobe.
And now I can say I've seen Alien, and it was made in 1979. And it's actually still an incredible movie, like really well done. There's no point where you're like, geez, what a corny movie. Like, never. It's actually really, really well done. And they do a very good job of like, you don't ever really see it all the way. And the things you do see are really like spooky. They do a great job, and they develop an extremely interesting storyline. But I made it through. Okay, no one cares. It's too long.
Yeah,
okay,
girl.
I'm sorry. And I got to go anyway. My daughter's coming home with a bee sting, so I got to run. Thank you for listening to this episode.
Another episode of Food Freedom and Fertility.
/dog talk /sci-fi talk /alien talk /don't show your 7-year-old that movie. Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to foodfreedomfertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's foodfreedomfertility.com. Thanks for listening.